Good evening. What's up, guys? How's it going? I'll tell you, it's a great day here. I'm feeling a little excited. It's Manoah Day, right? And boy, what a dominant performance he put on today. The Mountaineer product, the West Virginia University product, the 11th overall pick. I'll tell you, I can remember a couple years back, nobody heard of this kid out of West Virginia University, and he got drafted with the 11th pick. And I was talking at another network, and I do believe I may have been one of the first people on air to tell people about Alek Manoah. And today we saw just a glimpse of what this kid brings to the table. It's one of those things where I really look forward to. It's been interesting because I'm a Cubs fan at heart. People know this, but it's tough here in Indianapolis. The home market dictates that all the games are blacked out here. Whatever. So I haven't got to watch hardly any Cubs games. And I've kind of looked at having the MLB.com. I've kind of looked elsewhere. I have Vlad Guerrero on a couple of my teams. So, I've been a big Bo Bichette advocate. Hey, Steve, how you doing? Welcome. Bringing in a Mountaineer to a WVU grad is just icing on top of the cake for me. I am all in on these young Blue Jays. And, boy, this Manoah kid lived up to billing today. I'll say this now. After seeing what I saw today, Manoah gets the ball every fifth day for as long as he can handle it. He's a big guy. He throws a hard fastball, and it's one of those things where he kind of reminds me a little bit of Lance Lynn, a little bigger Lance Lynn, and he's going to be able to shoulder that workload, and that's exactly what Toronto needs. So I'm really looking forward to Manoah Day for the next 10 years, hopefully. Today, of course, in Yankee Stadium, that little stadium, it's interesting that, you kind of wonder how he does with the fly balls and such. 6 innings pitched, 2 hits, 0 runs, 2 walks, 7 Ks. I tell you, the thing I love most about him is he's really demonstrative out there. He kind of wears his emotions on his sleeve, and it's really one of those things. He has really good command and control of his fastball and his slider, and those are going to be his bread and butter pitches. He's developed a sinker and a changeup, which he used 21 and 15% of the time. But he's going to lean on that fastball slider combination, and as well he should. The biggest thing about Manoah today, 14 of 21 first pitch strikes. That's going to get you a long way in the majors, and that's what a lot of these young pitchers don't understand when they come up. You have to control and command. It's just not about throwing strikes. He was throwing good strikes, and that makes the difference between a rookie pitcher struggling and a rookie pitcher really exceeding expectations, and that's exactly what Manoah did today. Again, it's really it's really fun watching these games and seeing these guys that you've spoken about come to light. I'm not. It might sound like I'm bragging. I'm not bragging. There are a lot of players I don't, I'm late to the game on, but this is one of those instances where I've been really on this guy for a while, and I expect him to be the ace of this staff from here on out in Toronto. He's just what the Blue Jays need. He's that big, burly innings eater. He's going to keep his ERA down. It's a great move for the Blue Jays. Couple other things. So I guess I should introduce myself. Chappy here, Chap's Fantasy Chat. I come to you on Thursday nights at 8. Draft for Upside is the sponsor, and iLogic Media is the host. So if you go to ilogicmedia.com, there's all kinds of great shows there. You'll see all my shows there. They do a really good job there. So make sure and go check that out. Like and subscribe to my page. You'll get notified of all of my shows that I have going on. I also have at 10 o'clock. This is a baseball show during baseball season. At 10 o'clock, it's the other angle with Chappie and RC. Please come back and join me. We'll talk some baseball, probably a little bit more holistically at that hour. But then we'll also talk about a whole lot of NFL stuff. So come back and join me at 10. And obviously, StreamYard, ask any questions you might have. And, this is meant to be interactive. So if you guys want to know something, please let me know what you're thinking. Couple more quick notes. Tonight, of course, we're going to talk about, it's interesting. We're all going through injury issues. Some people are going through worse cases than others. I've had some hits this year, but nothing major. I feel like what happens so often in these scenarios is people start to woe is me, and really, instead of sitting there and saying, oh, this is terrible, unless it's a case where you're losing a guy for the year and it's a redraft league, that's a little different, but still the same mindset has to come into play. How can I use this as an opportunity to make my team better? So tonight we're going to look at just a few indicators just to kind of give you guys an idea of where I'm coming from and how injuries impact lineup construction and opportunities for increased statistics given that situation. What am I talking about? Mike Trout's injured. You're not replacing Mike Trout, right? But when you look at it, Mike Trout is your center fielder. He's your I believe leadoff three hitter. I think he's a three hitter. It doesn't matter. It's moot. But you look at how when a guy like that goes out, it impacts the whole lineup. And when it impacts the whole lineup, you really want to think about who's the beneficiary of that injury. So, not to get too much into it, the beneficiary of that injury, and if they can hold or win the job, is Justin Upton and Juan Lagares. Lagares is one of those weird ones, right? Because it's not like he's ever had this big profile of a power hitter, but he's hitting in that cleanup spot. And let's be honest, he's got some pretty darn good hitters in front of him. So he's put in a spot where he can drive in a lot of runs just by being a competent major leaguer. And although it's not sexy, Lagares is in a good situation. So instances like that, right, where maybe the Mike Trout owner is, drinking his sorrows, you can be an opportunist and go out and take care of getting Justin Upton or even Lagares. From there, we're going to go to some hot bats, some streaky guys, some guys that you want to use in DFS, and then some guys that you can kind of look at to add short-term, maybe long-term. Last week I did guys who started off cold and then got hot. This week I'm looking at it a little bit differently. I'll go back to that next week. I'm looking more of in terms of overlooked situations, right? With the hot arms and bats for the second tier guys. So we'll talk about that. And then, of course, my favorite section I've been talking about is guys that'll be on your FAAB hot list next week, right? So, in other words, guys that you could pick up for $1 or $2 this week, who next week you're probably going to have to spend a lot more money. So the thought process here is, say you went out and you blew your wad early on insert Cedric Mullins or Alek Manoah or any of these. So say you're down to a 30-year budget. You have to start thinking ahead of the curve so you can get these players before they become hot topics. We'll talk about some of those players tonight. So let's get into it, shall we? You know, it's one of those things. I do want to talk about a couple things. Of course, White Sox versus lefties. The White Sox are facing, I don't have it in front of me, another left-handed pitcher this year. But really, if you're playing DFS, you want to get all the White Sox in against your lefties. They're 9-1 this year and 23-1 since the beginning of last year against left-handed pitchers. That's a .957 winning percentage, and it's easily the highest winning percentage over a 2-season span since 1900. So it's one of those things where if you are playing DFS and you see the White Sox going against a left-handed pitcher, you really just want to load those lineups up. Just one other thing I wanted to talk about. Again, I talk about being a Cubs fan. It's tough here because you can't watch any of their games. But they've really turned it on. I can't help but be happy for Kris Bryant. I think he hit his 11th home run today. What the starters have done, though, has been the difference maker. If you look at team ERA in April and May, they've cut it in half almost. In April, they were at 4.89. They were 11-15. And, it's not just that. All the ancillary numbers as well, right? So we're looking at 35 home runs. We're looking at 124 earned runs, 216 hits. I mean, that's not good. So in May, they've gone 15-7 with a 2.72 ERA. That's a big difference. And what it means to me is the Cubs can't trade Kris Bryant. They can't, they have to go out and be buyers at the trade deadline. And I don't think that's what most Cub fans would have. I don't know about wanted to see, because I think they wanted to see, competent ownership and going out and adding good pieces to what was a really good nucleus rather than what they did. That's another story for another day. But I think at this point, if you're a Cubs fan, you have to hope that they go out and they try and spend money on an ace. They try and spend money on, good working components, because I feel like they need to keep this nucleus together now, right? So let's talk about injuries. Man, they're hitting us all hard, right? I can't stress to you enough that living in the moment with these injuries, it's hard not to take it, so personally, right? And of course, every scenario is different. Every scenario is different, and you're not always going to get a scenario where it's an easy fix. But if you're trying, there are fixes out there. That's my main point and what I want people to take away from this. I'll give you some examples, just a few, because it's one of those things. Each injury, I beg you guys to really think about what that means. And it doesn't have to be your player. I'll give you an example. Bryce Harper goes down. I can't remember what the injury is. It doesn't matter. This is a great opportunity for Brad Miller. It opens up more at-bats for him. And he was already getting pretty regular playing time. He becomes a necessity in that Philly lineup. Now, he's hit third. And let's be honest, guys, if we think back to Brad Miller, he's had some competent major league years. He's always been a power speed guy. This is an appealing bat. And, he's being overlooked. I'm trying to look up Harper's injury, how long he's going to be out for. He's going to be out an extended period of time. And if he plays well, then he'll get regular bats upon Harper's return. This is a great opportunity for a guy who realistically is 20/20 potential, can hit for high average, is hitting 304, I think it is right now. Here's another example. And this is a harder sell. Marcelo Zuna. Drew Waters. Now, this is a harder sell. Drew Waters is in a funk in the minors. He's not, I think he's at 1 for his last 18. So you have to see a little bit of an improvement from him. Granted. They have Abraham Almonte. There's some other opportunities. The one thing I don't do is move Austin Riley out to the outfield. That's the one thing I don't do. I don't mess with his bat. Drew Waters is interesting here. Those of you that know me know that I've not been a very big Christian Pache fan. I do like Drew Waters a lot. And it's one of those scenarios where he's got a better fantasy profile than Pache. And I think he's more disciplined as a hitter. So when he comes up, if he's just allowed to sit he's a center fielder. So if he sits in left field and you just let him hit at the bottom of the order, I think he responds well to that. I don't think Pache is a major league hitter. And I'm not saying that as a slight on Pache. I'm saying that as just how I see it. I feel like the Braves are in a pickle. They might have to go out and get somebody. And you really kind of owe it to the rookie to give him a chance before you go out and do that. This is a situation where I'm not sure there's a replacement. I'll tell you who benefits, though, in my mind, is a guy like Dansby Swanson. Erica, I'm drinking Mitchers. I'm sorry. I'm switching back and forth between Facebook and my sports group, so that's why I'm not answering till now. Mitchers, I tell you, this is really smooth. This is the first time I've had it. I broke a rule tonight. I usually try my bourbon before. Now, I sipped it, but I didn't have a couple to make sure that, I keep them on the road. But I'm enjoying it. It's quite smooth. So this one, you talk about a silly game. Tristan McKenzie. Does he not benefit from the Zach Plesac injury? Comes out, looks great. Has his walks back under control where he was last year. there's all of a sudden an opportunity. I love what this kid, he doesn't look like he's built for a workload, does he? But he throws the ball hard. And when he spots it well, he's a really good pitcher. So I feel like this is, the Indians need, the baseball team needs, that's weird. I got used to it in Washington. I'll get used to it in Cleveland. The baseball team really needs another pitcher now. And if you look at what McKenzie did last year, I feel like he can really be a big bump for them. 2-1 with a 3.24 ERA over 33 innings pitched. 42-9 was his K to walk rate. 42-9. That's the kind of pitcher they need. This year, for comparison's sake, 31.3 innings. He's already walked 30 batters this year. 30. Now, granted, 44 Ks. Wednesday night, he had 3 walks and 5 Ks. We can live with that. But he's certainly going to get an opportunity because of Plesac's injury. So you really can. It's not always right in front of your eyes. Sometimes you kind of have to think holistically about the situation, and we'll do that. I don't want to break down every injury. Obviously, the other big one that I talked about at the top of the hour, the Mike Trout injury, I think benefits Upton at the top of the lineup, and I think it benefits Lagares. I don't know what kind of ball player Juan Lagares is from an offensive perspective, but as long as he's hitting fourth in that lineup, I'm willing to experiment with it, right? I mean, if I need an outfielder, I'm going to take a good long look at Juan Lagares. But to be clear, I think Upton's a clear beneficiary. I think Upton's a clear beneficiary in Anaheim, in Los Angeles. And, clearly he likes hitting at the top of that lineup. We'll talk about him a little later. Shohei's start moved to Friday. Just came through. So I do want to talk about just a little bit some hot arms and bats, some guys who, if you're playing a DFS, these are guys that you really should be looking at. I do this all the time. I'll go a week back and just kind of look at OPS, slug, OBP, average, steals, and it's good if you're in a year-long league to kind of always be on top of, like, knowing a guy like Brandon Crawford a couple weeks back was really hot, can really benefit your team. And that's why I always do next week's FAAB, because I feel like if you can get on these guys right as they start, Miguel Sano is a perfect example. If you got it on him at the beginning of last week, you could have rode 7 or 8 home runs in a 7-day period. That's beneficial. You always want to be looking at those guys. Adolis Garcia is a perfect example. He just hasn't slowed down, right? This is one of those guys. People keep giving comps. I love comps. His hands are so fast, but this could go one of two ways with Garcia. People talked about the comp with Randy Arozarena, and I see it. I see what they're saying. I think they're right. He certainly, you look at his skill set. He's in the top whatever percentile sprint speed, so he can steal bases. His power is prolific, clearly. He has quick hands, so he's hard to fool inside. He's hard to jam up. I can see all of the things that make him a perennial all-star He reminds me a little bit of Jordan Alvarez in that regard, just his overall physicality. But remember when we were calling Aristis Aquino the next Eric Davis? These things happen. That's my point, right? These guys come up and they have – I'm starting to think Garcia is pretty sure. He's a pretty sure thing. I think, if you look at – so where do we sit? 290 batting average, 15 home runs, tied for second in the majors, 24 runs scored, 40 – this is as of yesterday, so I apologize. 40 RBIs, tied for second, 5 stolen bases, guys. We're approximately a quarter way through the season. Approximately. So you're talking about approximately a 20 stolen base guy. Do the math on the homers. 15 homers. Slug, 7th in the majors. 613. So since April 13th, when he was called up, he's 7th in the league with hits, with 44, first in homers with 14, first in RBIs with 38, and 4th in slugging at 603. He and Alek Manoah are going to be the 2 horses in this Rookie of the Year race the entire season. So, I'll tell you, you're going to have to pay a pretty penny for him. But I feel like you probably ought to go out and buy high in Adolis Garcia. Because I feel like he's here to stay. Only Fernando Tatis has more RBIs than Adolis Garcia over the last 7 days. He's been consistent. And his hand speed is really impressive. He's really quick through the zone with his hand speed. If you haven't seen him, do yourself a favor. Watch this guy on an at-bat to at-bat basis and just watch the things that he can do. It really is impressive. Durf, I think you're on here. You're gonna love this one. How about Jose Altuve? Hot bats, DFS plays. We're seeing the return of MVP caliber Jose Altuve. 306, 5 homers, 28 runs, 19 RBIs, just 1 stolen base. 356 OBP, 429 slug, 796 OPS. Those are just numbers. What I want to know is, versus his career, where are we as Jose Altuve owners after his really bad year last year? 356 OBP. His career's 361. 429 slug. His career's 458. And 796 OPS. His career's 819. Now, you can nitpick and say those are all down. Those are all comparable. And it's important to notate, everybody wants to go to cheating, and I get it. I do. I understand. I don't agree with it, but I get it. He's been consistent. He's been consistent. And that's the thing you're looking at when you're trying when you're trying to build a solid team all the way throughout, identifying the Jose Altuve's to fill out your roster, right? You have to draft well early, but then you have to get lucky with a couple guys like Altuve. Some more hot bats. How about Fernando Tatis Jr., guys? Look, you guys know I'm hard-headed. You guys know that I'm set my ways and I'm hard to convince otherwise. I'll admit that. Fernando Tatis is proving to be the number one overall pick in my mind. I still love Juan Soto. I still love Ronald Acuna Jr. He's distancing himself from it, again, in my mind, Bo Bichette as the second best shortstop. But on top of that, he's just like Garcia. He's stayed hot. He hasn't really gone on long slumps. And he looks like a 10-year vet out there. Over his last 7 days, 2.270 OPS. 2.270 OPS. That's asinine. Can't just drink whiskey. Sometimes you got to water the pipes with some soda. 2.270 OPS, 4 homers, and 12 RBIs in the last 7 days. 12 RBIs in the last 7 days, guys. 7 runs and 3 stolen bases, just to kind of rub it in. This guy's whatever he wants to be, he can be. And he proves it every day. Like I say, I get to watch a good bit of West Coast baseball. I've seen him a good bit this year. He and Shohei Ohtani are about the 2 most entertaining players out there. Certainly on the West Coast. It's interesting. I always try and go get players that I feel like are on the cusp of breaking out before the owner really realizes it. And, I made a trade recently in my home league, and I gave up some really good talent to get this guy. But I'm really excited to have him on my main team. I have 2 leagues that are really like the leagues that I want to win in the most badly. My home league and then, our big money league, of course. But Austin Riley, I just acquired in a group trade. I got JD Martinez and I gave up Arenado, and anyway, I got Riley. I'm happy about it, right? And he's been super hot at the plate. 320. Austin Riley's hitting 320. 9 homers, 27 RBIs. Actually, it's 10 homers now. He hit one today or yesterday. 27 RBIs, 27 runs, 27 runs, 21 RBIs. 414 OBP is the 5th best in the league. I was talking about him 3 weeks ago, I believe, when he was widely available. And, all he's done since then he won NL Player of the Week. He's hit a homer almost every day. I think they said he's hit 7 homers in his last 17 games. And now, again, with the Ozuna injury, hopefully they leave him at third, but he just moves up another spot in the lineup. I look for him to benefit greatly, if there is such a thing, from that Ozuna injury. So, how about some guys? So those are the guys that you're not getting most likely, right? You might be able to get Garcia. Maybe you could snake Riley. Probably not, though. I wouldn't trade him. Here's some available names. And these are important parts too, right? because you don't always want to give up what you got working for you to get another guy that may or may not work for you. And of course, every time you're going to trade for one of these guys, you're going to have to give up something you didn't want to get rid of. Here's some guys that you might be able to get. How about Rosario? Last 7 days, 393, 2 doubles, a triple, 452 OBP, and 2 stolen bases. He's the everyday shortstop now that Jimenez has been demoted. And he's a top-of-the-lineup player for the Indians, for the baseball team. I talked about him last week, but I want to emphasize it this week. We're looking at a player who could very well have 2020 this year and hit at a decent average. Shortstop and outfield eligibility. The Indians like having this guy as an option. And I feel like you're seeing it now as this year's ground on. That they're like, oh, yeah, this guy is a good player. He is capable. And this is an offense, guys, let's be honest, this is an offense that needs it. Whether it's first, second, whatever, not like the Mets where he couldn't find the top of the lineup. He's going to hit at the top of the lineup in this offense. I love him on Rosario for the rest of the year, and he's widely available. How about Garrett Cooper? Outfielder from Miami. He's hit .524 over the last week. 3 homers, 2 doubles, and a triple. 7 runs and 8 RBIs. I'm not really going to say a whole lot about Cooper the player. I do want to talk about, though, Miami's thought process on talent. Miami kind of reminds me of a San Francisco, honestly, Pittsburgh Pirate type scenario. I know they're not doing it very well right now, but where they're going to throw really good pitching at you. And then you're going to use analytics to build, almost like Moneyball, right? Analytics to build like their team around it. So, whereas Garrett Cooper might not be the sexiest player in the world, he does have a possibility of flashing really good statistical numbers just because of the team that he's on, what's being asked of him, and, quite honestly, how he reacts to it. So right now he's hitting, and Miami needs offense. So, sure, why not take a chance on him? If you need a player for next week, take a chance on him. I'll tell you, I watched last night Luis Garcia for the Astros. Really impressive pitcher. 3-3 with a 2.93 ERA, 1.02 WHIP, and 54 Ks to 16 walks over 46 innings pitched. He's got an unconventional delivery. He almost has a reliever's delivery where he does this rock side to side. But the thing about him is his stuff is good. And while they want him to be a reliever, if they do use him as a reliever, I believe he'll be more of an influencer, a guy that can get a lot of decisions. And he's really tough to hit. He throws a fastball. I think it's almost like a slurve combo. And he locates really well. Really well. So, happens everywhere. Kind of got to speed it up here because I want to talk about a few other things here. I I love doing that though, right? Like just talking about guys that can influence you, guys that when you're throwing in a DFS lineup, looking at who's hot over the short term, and then also for a year long. It's important to do that stuff. I do want to talk about. I want to ask a question out there. Who's the most undervalued prospect out there that you want all the ownership of? Right? So I'm not talking about, I'm not talking about Wander Franco. I'm not talking about any of these guys that are like mainstream guys. I'm talking about, so for instance, I want all the shares of Sam Hoff. All the shares of Sam Hoff. And I know he's injured. I think he's out for the year. But if you're in any sort of dynasty keeper type format where you keep minor league players, I want all the Sam Hoff. This is a 40 homer catcher talent. And since he's out this year, everybody's just kind of discarded him. I want all the shares of Quinn Prister. Guys, here's the thing. Get on board getting Pirates prospects now before everybody else in every league you're in starts to get wise to what they got going on. Quinn Prister is going to be a top 10 prospect this time next year. I think he was a 7th overall pick out of the 2019 draft, high school pitcher. Really a dominant skill set. Look for him to fly up the prospect charts. I'm taking him wherever I can. Another Pirates prospect I want all the shares of that's underrated. And I'm probably going to butcher his name. Rosie Contreras. Came over in one of the offseason trades. I think he came from New York. I think he came in a Tyone trade. He has been out of sight since he's been called up in I believe he's now Altuve AA. Strikeout pitcher, really good command and control. Look for him to be a fast riser. Look for him to even probably get a spot here in Indianapolis later on this summer. Looking at, yes, I said that earlier, Randall. Thank you. So the other part about that, just to kind of go back to it real quick, Waters is slumping awfully right now. He's in a 1 for 18 slump. You need to see him come out of that, right? Once he comes out of that, look for him to be the left fielder in Atlanta. It's just a matter of time. Durf, you're really lucky you got him. I honestly, I have him one place. I talked about him 2 years ago on another network. I can't remember where it was. I have selective memory. But, I think I was the first one to talk about Alek Manoah. And again, he's the ace of that staff moving forward. That's hefty words, but I believe in it. Here's a name to write down, guys. This guy's going really overlooked, but you're going to hear a lot about him in the next couple months. 20-year-old Riley Green. He's already in Double-A for the Detroit Tigers, the 5th overall pick of the 2019 draft. He's probably still a year away. But this guy is a hitter. This guy is a different type of skill set. He's one of those guys that I say this a little tongue in cheek. He's very Juan Soto-esque in his approach. High bat to ball skill, high OBP, ability to hit for power at a young age. He's starting to get a little bit of notoriety, he's already a high prospect, but he's one of those guys that a lot of people have forgotten about because they didn't play minor league baseball last year. How about guys that are just getting called up. Esteban Floreal getting an opportunity for the Yankees. 21-year-old center fielder. Plus speed. Probably needs a little bit more development on the power side. I'm lukewarm on this. He could be a cheap stolen base option. I don't know how much the Yankees are going to let him run. That's the only problem with that. He's one to definitely keep an eye on. I wouldn't go spending the bank on FAAB. He's one of those guys that I might throw $1 in on this week and hope you get him. Hope people have forgotten about him. But if he goes out and gets a couple hits, they'll be on top of him pretty quickly. Spencer Howard had another pretty good outing today. He's one of these guys. He's a really young pitcher. Doesn't have a whole lot of experience outside of IA, but you got to pitch for the Phillies a decent amount last year. Wasn't terribly effective, but didn't embarrass himself. Looks like he's up. Could be up for a while. And let's be honest, the Phillies could use some pitching. Who couldn't? How about Nate Pearson? We saw out in Manoa today. Nate Pearson's not far behind him. Right? Really like this kid. Liked him last year. Clearly needed just a touch more refinement. But I feel like this year he is going to be closer to a finished product. How about Jarren Duran? I was answering some questions online today about Duran, and I think it was a Red Sox group. But basically saying, well, it's time to call him up with I can't remember who it was that got cut or injured. It doesn't matter. Maybe Kike's injured. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. But, here's the thing to know about Jarren Duran. If you're looking at like kind of prospect hunting, getting the guy ahead of time, please know this about Jarren Duran. He is playing for the USA Olympic qualifying team in a tournament. And he's not going to be available to be called up until probably the first week of June. I think June 5th is when the tournament ends. So if they qualify then, he'll go back to the Olympics. And at the end of, I think it's the end of June, early July, he'll be out for another 2 weeks. So look for Duran to come up right after that qualifier. But if they don't qualify, I guess there's another qualifier where they can qualify. I don't know. The Olympics are weird. So Duran's call-up is directly impacted by what happens with those qualifiers. So pay attention to that and know that before you go out spending a whole bunch of FAAB on a guy that you're going to have to sit on for a month. Not saying you're going to have to sit on for a month. There's a possibility. That's my only point. The thing about Duran is, whereas everybody in the world seems to know about Vidal Brujan, Duran's a little bit less notarized. And quite honestly, he's starting to get a little bit of helium because he's hitting for some more power. But he's hit 7 home runs in 18 games, guys. This guy, his calling card is his legs. So when he comes up, you want him for the stolen bases. All right, guys, this is what you're waiting for. Got 10 minutes left. Come back at 10 o'clock. Join me and Randall, the other angle with Chappie and RC. We're going to talk some more baseball. I got about 6 pages of notes I'm not going to be able to get to, Randall. Marco Luciani, is he going to hit enough to move? Really struggling to able. That's the thing, right? Where these guys – now, Luciano, he's one of those names that you really have to – once he gets going, they're going to move him quickly. But, I'd be a little concerned. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes, we've talked about it. Some of the best building blocks I've ever had in my life has come directly due to failure. So when these guys, that's why I love a guy like Brian Hayes. He's failed. The Pirates pushed him, and he's failed at multiple levels. So he doesn't get flustered when things aren't necessarily going his way. He'll be back soon, by the way. If you're in a shallow league, now's the time to pick up Brian Hayes. Probably 2 weeks. So let's talk about that, right? We're talking about waiver wire futures. The guys that are going to be big on FAAB next week. Let's get them this week. Who am I talking about? Who's hot on this week? I got a bunch of them, guys. I got 4 of them here. How about Seth Brown? Seth Brown, outfielder for Oakland. He's hitting .231. 8 homers, 15 runs, and 19 RBIs. He's sitting second for the A's. 8 homers and 19 RBIs in his last 33 games. That projects out to a 40-homer, 94 RBI season. And here's the great part, guys. This is from a night or two ago, so it may have changed a little bit. He's rostered in 3% of Yahoo leagues, 19% of CBS, and 24% of Fantrack leagues. These are the guys we're talking about. 8 homers in his last 33 games. Hitting second for the A's. Love him. Love him. If you can pick him up, Durf. Pick him up. Pick him up. Brad Miller. Yes, that Brad Miller. Going to be playing every day for the Phillies now. He's carrying, he's one of those hit or miss guys. Currently, he's carrying a really solid fantasy profile. 329, 5 homers, 17 runs, 13 RBIs, and 3 stolen bases. The industry's going to start catching up to this guy. Currently, he's 20% owned on Fantrax, 13% owned on Yahoo, and 9% owned on CBS. You're talking about a guy that could hit 2015 and carry you a 300-plus average. We've seen him do it before, guys. You're getting him for free. Throw $1 on him this week. He might be a little bit more than that, honestly, with the Harper News. Mentioned him earlier. Justin Upton is in a perfect situation here. The Angels have to manufacture offense. Yes, his batting average stinks. But you know what? It's a lot better in that leadoff spot. He's hit homers in each of the last 2 nights. Hitting behind Ohtani Rendon isn't a terrible thing. We could be talking about Justin Upton as a major pickup this time next week. How about Miguel Anduar? This is my favorite of these. Of all of these guys that I just talked about. I love Miguel Anduar. He's hit .213. 0 homers, 4 RBIs, 4 runs, 2 RBIs. But over the last week, he's hitting .304 with a double, 2 runs, and 2 RBIs. Now, you got to project a little bit here, right? But here's the thing. He's played every night but one for the last 7 nights. He's had a hit in 7 of his last 9 games. And he's had 3 multi-hit games during that time. Again, I stress, no homers yet. We're talking about a guy in 2018 who hit .297. 27 homers and 47 doubles as a 23-year-old, guys. Andujar still has major upside. A lot of the industry shied away from him. I am leaning in right here. I love Miguel Andujar. I think he's a real pickup option, especially, again, if you're trying to surf it. There's a strong possibility that he hits 3 homers this week. All right, guys. Come back and check me out at 10 o'clock. I want to talk some more baseball. I want to talk a little bit more holistically, right? We didn't get to talk much about, some of the happenings. Looks like we got a Yankees-Red Sox rivalry back again. Both of those teams are relevant. How about the White Sox and them crushing left-handed? Shohei's pitching tonight. So Randall and I still have plenty to talk about. We're going to talk some football too. That's really important as well because, look, guys, here we are. We're headed into June. We're looking at a month and a half before we start revving up fantasy football drafts. So you want to be ahead of the game there. So we're going to talk a little bit about philosophy and what we're looking at doing going into this year's fantasy football draft. So come back at 10 o'clock. Chap's Fantasy Chat at 8. The Other Angle at 10. Draft for Upside. Find us at iLogic Media. Thank you guys so much for the support. I hope you appreciated the content. I love doing this. Death, taxes, and Manoa. See you guys in an hour.